I'm thrilled to present to you drugless support for autoimmunity. Autoimmunity is a very complex subject, but we've boiled it down into 6 points that will be actionable for you. They will be actionable for you if you are on medication or you're not on medication, if you're under medical care or you're not under medical care. And they will make sense for you, and they've been proven to work. So even though this may be a scary time on your life, or it may be a confusing time because you don't really know what's going on, what I've put together should help many things make a lot more sense for you. And I'm so excited to share this with you. Let's get started. Whether you have a chronic condition that you just don't know how to get help with, or you have a diagnosable autoimmune condition, I so look forward to presenting to you drugless support for autoimmunity. Let's first give you a bit of a background on myself, and we'll keep it brief. I'm a 1983 cum laude graduate of Palmer College of Chiropractic in Davenport, Iowa. I've been in practice in Paducah, Kentucky, 37 years with thousands and thousands of hours of sitting in a classroom all around the country, and many, many hours on my own. In the last couple of years, we've seen patients from 21 different states who've flown into the small town of Paducah, Kentucky, some even from the West Coast, to get help with autoimmune conditions or emotional traumas. Now, my wife, Debbie, and I together have 7 children, 16 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandson. I have a trademark, or hidden, which is a representation of hormonal balance, immune strength, detoxification efficiency, and neurological connection. Hidden represents our approach to patient care. Now, I didn't go looking for autoimmune conditions. This doctor's mother gave me a call after being in a local hospital for 30 days to help him a little bit with his neck. And so we visited him as a friend there and began advising him. And as soon as he got out of the hospital, we worked with him nightly for months and months. And then in our office, as he came to our office in a wheelchair, when I first met him, he could only blink his eyelids and move his fingertips a little bit. And that was it. He was totally paralyzed with an autoimmune attack called polymyositis, attacked and caused 50 pounds of muscle loss. A top university said that he wouldn't be able to walk again. However, 6 months later, he was able to walk, was able to return to the West Coast and go back into practice. And this was his picture a few years later. Last year, when I was out to Los Angeles for a seminar, I got to interview him on hope and healing, finding how he found hope in that hospital bed. And it was such an amazing interview. I hope you'll watch that on YouTube. Now, just a year or so later, my front desk assistant, Megan, was on her job less than a month and started complaining of her eyes. And she went legally blind within 3 days with an autoimmune attack on the retinas of her eyes. She had to take steroids, but as soon as she got a small break from the steroids, we started doing immune testing and found many different immune triggers that we dealt with, and dealt with the predecessor work of what I'll talk about tonight in terms of dealing with stress and trauma. After addressing all those findings, she regained her sight and went on to work with us for 5 full years. And I love the nerdy stuff on autoimmunity. I study it, but I'm going to leave it in the books. I'm going to leave it in the binders. I'm going to leave it on my computer. What I'm going to talk with you about tonight is 6 important concepts from our talk, Autoimmune Illness, How to Stop Attacking Yourself. And you can find that on the original talk on YouTube, and it has close to 40,000 views. Then I'll go over our current system, and I'll tell you how that you can get in touch with us. Step number 1 is change how you look at autoimmunity. When I was a sick young person, I went to this medical physician, and he said the way to a long, healthy life is to develop a chronic illness and take really good care of it. There's so much wisdom in that if we have a chronic condition, but we take better care of ourselves than the average person, we can go a long ways in our life. So we have to look at how we look at autoimmunity. Do we just say it's the luck of the draw and you got bad genes and your immune system's stupid and you can't really do anything about it? I mean, if you buy into that, the best that can come from that is symptom control while your underlying health continues to be damaged. But if, however, you look at health like your genes are just unique and you can do something about their expression, it's called epigenetics. It relates to environment, it relates to lifestyle, and you can do something about it, then the best that can come from this is true health. And so many of our patients have achieved true health. Change number 2 is become a firefighter. Drive down inflammation. That occurs at the cellular level, and we can see that hormones and neurotransmitters dock into these cell receptors, which creates messages inside the cell. But if this cell membrane here is stiff, then we can't get nutrients into the cell or toxins back out. So we want to start with an anti-inflammatory diet. And you are on Google or on the internet like everybody else, and you can Google paleo diet or or autoimmune paleo diet, it's called, and see what we're talking about there. Now, much of autoimmunity starts in the gut with damage to the gut, and things get into the immune system too quickly and have to react too soon in the immune system. Now, there are a number of ways that we can assess the gut with DNA stool testing for 60 different hidden infections and 7 important markers of digestive health and gut inflammation levels. We can assess delayed reactions to foods. We can assess something called the wheat zoomer, which is 35 different ways that we can react to gluten or its components of wheat. We can assess lectins, which are coatings around certain foods, dairy and corn, analysis that can be very specific, and we can check for immediate food reactions as well. These can all be done remotely, meaning that we can send you the test kits and you can complete these tests at home and we can consult with you on the phone. Now, step 3 is to stabilize and balance your immune system. Our immune system is much like a teeter-totter, but the legs of that teeter-totter have to be strong. The legs of that teeter-totter are vitamin D. And if our vitamin D is low, which it is for most autoimmune patients, many it's 30 or below, which is the lab minimum, then we are going to set ourselves up for a very unbalanced immune system, and we're going to essentially get hurt. This immune system balance relates to too many antibody cells or too many cells responsible for antibody production, and they're tagging other cells. So we think of that as like Mr. Columbo here, tagging what's good guy and what's a bad guy. And then we have too few of the killer cells. This is called Th2 dominance. And all I need you to know here is that our immune system can get unbalanced, and that things like when this imbalance is occurring, things like echinacea, astragalus, maitake, and reishi mushrooms, and more can help stimulate it. And if our Th2 cells are dominant, then we have too many of these killer cells and too few of the cells responsible for antibody production. Then we need to take things like green tea, grapeseed extract, pine bark extracts, white willow bark, curcumin, resveratrol, and caffeine. Yes, coffee is good for some with autoimmunity and not good for others. So this is a big factor in immune balance that we have to get balanced out on many people in the beginning so that we can calm their immune system and calm the attack. Now, step number 4 is to get rid of the bad guy, the antigen that's causing the immune system to overreact. You see, when our first line of immune system, called our innate immune system, when it's weak, that includes the physical barriers, the skin, the gut, the lungs, the chemical barriers like not enough stomach acid, not enough bile, saliva and mucus problems. And then it includes the initial inflammatory response. We might think there of white blood cells and all that would occur when you cut your finger, that inflammation and the rushing of the area of white blood cells, all of that is what's called our innate immune system. When that's weak, then we get stealth pathogens. We get, meaning bad guys that get into our system, and we get an overactivity in the acquired or adaptive immune system. These are B cells responsible for antibody production and helper or killer T cells. So we get that imbalance that we were talking about, that Th1 or Th2 imbalance. And so it's important that we find this bad guy. Now, additional factors in development are weakness or degeneration of a particular tissue or cell type that will lead to a leakage of those cells or cell fragments into the blood. That results in increased antibody production to that cell type. An example is many people develop brain autoimmunity after a concussion because there's microscopic bleeding and there are damage to brain cells that the immune system sees as abnormal and begins to attack it. So this is why most chronic conditions will have an autoimmune element. Now, something can happen also called molecular mimicry. This is where the immune system that's stressed, and I want to emphasize stressed because it shouldn't happen normally, but an immune system that's stressed will confuse things. So myelin basic protein is a protein involved in the nervous system and involved in the disease of multiple sclerosis. And myelin basic protein can be confused with E. coli, and so E. coli can cause a molecular mimicry and cause an attack on myelin basic protein. So those are just some of the ways that autoimmunity can occur. I had to throw in a couple of things with more technical things for you here. But some of the common bad guys are infections, bacterial, viral, fungal, and parasitic, foods such as gluten, soy, and dairy, environmental things such as dust or mold, toxins such as plastic, pesticides, nitrates, and more, and then heavy metals like mercury, lead, cadmium, and arsenic. Step number 5 is to balance the brain, to balance the immune system. We must balance left and right brain. We must improve our vagal tone, that's our parasympathetic nervous system, and downregulate our survival or fight-flight nervous system. And then we need to clear emotional traumas which lock in the limbic system of our brain and drive the immune system off, allowing these bad guys to persist. So addressing right brain weakness will help address the inability to shut off inflammation, and addressing left brain weakness will help with the inability to properly initiate inflammation. So here I'm showing a posture associated with right brain weakness. You notice how my right hand is rolled in more than my left. You notice how my right toe is out more than my left. This is a right brain weakness issue. Here I'm adjusting one of my former staff members for a right brain weakness issue. We have special glasses on that are flashing light into the eyes, and we're adjusting the extremities in a light way, really just stretches of the fingers, the elbow, and at the knees in a precise way to feed information to the right brain versus the left brain. But again, that's to address the ability to shut off or start inflammation. Now, when our fight or flight nervous system is engaged, there is direct sympathetic nervous system stimulation of the thymus gland, which is a little immune gland behind our sternum. The job of that immune gland is to decide what cells are reactive to self, autoimmune cells, and what cells are reactive to pathogens, things coming in from the outside. And then the thymus should help us get rid of cells that are reactive to self, autoimmune cells that are beating up on us. But if we're in too much fight or flight nervous system, it can't do that. So we have to address that. I want you to watch one of our videos on YouTube called the hummingbird exercise. That's a way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, and particularly the vagus nerve, because that is highly involved in autoimmunity. There's tons of research with patients with rheumatoid arthritis, they're putting in vagus nerve stimulators, implanting them for tens and tens of thousands of dollars to stimulate the vagus nerve and reduce inflammation. But what they find is improved levels of blood inflammation, and they find decreased joint pain and damage. But this hummingbird exercise can help you stimulate your vagus nerve at no cost to you. Now, for protection, the limbic system responds the same for physical as it does emotional pain. And these emotional pains associated with adverse childhood events in childhood or even in adulthood become entangled in the brain. They build strong pathways for inflammatory stress to foods, to infections, to environmental allergens and toxins. These create core beliefs and negative patterns which unknowingly self-sabotage our ability to heal. Now, there's a number of research on autoimmune disease and childhood adverse childhood events. This is one of the papers. You can see that childhood traumatic stress increased the likelihood of hospitalization with a diagnosed autoimmune disease decades into adulthood. These findings are consistent with recent biological studies on the impact of early life stress and subsequent inflammatory responses. So early life traumas set up the nervous system and immune system to create inflammation, and that leads to autoimmune disease down the road. Moreover, many respective studies found that a high proportion, up to 80% of patients reported uncommon emotional stress before the onset of their autoimmune disease. And I can tell you from working with hundreds of patients, that is the case. And again, that stress initiates changes in the nervous system and immune system, which create inflammation. Step number 6 is to live an autoimmune lifestyle, to have a low inflammatory diet, to allow yourself low exposure to toxins, to optimize your nutrition, to know how your brain health contributes to your immune health and take steps toward better brain health. Listen to what your body is telling you and know when to push and when to back off, and know how to love yourself where you're at. It's a unique thing. I call it the dual state of healing, to be able to love yourself where you're at, but want more at the same time. Now, much of this autoimmune thing is about finding your lane. Those with autoimmunity can't drive in the average person's lane. But if you find your lane in terms of diet, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of supplements, and in terms of getting rid of emotional stresses, you will drive just as far and just as fast as anyone else. Now, let's put all of this together. The immune system and brain/nervous system dance together to take on any external threat, and they must work together, and they do communicate with each other continuously all throughout the body. There are messenger molecules that coordinate with each other. In autoimmunity, there's a precise activation of the brain that will show in a carefully documented neurological exam, will show correlated reflex points representative of these priority bad guys and the associated brain trauma patterns. Epstein-Barr virus, for example, will show a specific pattern of reflex points when we give the brain a specific input. And there will be specific emotional traumas involved with those who have difficulty dealing with Epstein-Barr virus. Those things can be like feeling controlled by others, always putting others first and putting themselves last, feeling a major fear of disappointing others, feeling like giving up, being overtired or tired of dealing with the same old thing over and over, perfectionism, and being disappointed in oneself or feeling a loss of hope. These are so classic for these patients. Now, this was a patient with low energy. She couldn't think. She dropped out of college. She was struggling every day. She just wanted to stay in her car and live in her car because that's where she was comfortable. Her dad flew her out 2,000 miles from Oregon to see me for a week, and we found Epstein-Barr autoimmunity. Then she stated that everybody else I saw pulled some leaves off the tree, and my week with Dr. Winters took the tree out by its roots. Now she's back home in Maui. By the way, that's a great vacation spot for her doctor, me, to fly out and see her and work with her again for another week. And now she's getting straight A's in college, and I just wrote a letter of recommendation for her to chiropractic college. This autoimmune care totally changed her life. This was a lady who was catching every infection going around. She was missing a lot of work as a result. She could sleep for days. She had to sit down, being weak after just showering in the morning. Her fevers would cycle on and off, and her weight loss or weight gain could go up or down by as much as 20 pounds in a single month without changing her diet. This QNRT autoimmune exam that we do showed plastics. Now, I would have never picked that up in my history, but as I asked her about plastics, I found out that she was microwaving in plastic containers daily, and she worked in a local manufacturing facility that made plastics. After 10 QNRT resets to the brain for this emotional trauma associated with plastics and 3 nutritional protocols to detoxify plastics, her immune system is now strong, fevers are gone, her weight is constant, her energy is great, and she can do whatever she wants to after work and on the weekends. Now, this lady had a white blood cell count that was lab low her entire life. See, she had childhood trauma that has been documented in the literature, her specific trauma to cause abnormal immune system regulation. And so her white cells were always low. We found with our QNRT exam environmental and toxic mold, and that gives a typical stress history of feeling unworthy or unable to say no or feeling abandoned. After we did 6 QNRT resets uncovering specific traumas, and we used 1 nutritional supplement with her over about a 2-month period, she had her first ever normal white blood cell count. She's had major changes in the quality of life. We've got a video testimonial on YouTube that you can see, and her change in quality of life was absolutely phenomenal. Now, this was a young lady, 38 years old, who had been told after examination in the medical system that she would probably need a pacemaker. She was weak. A lot of the time she was in bed because she had no energy, and things just were not going good. In our exam, we identified toxic mold, and she had 2 QNRT resets and then 1 nutritional supplement for mold detoxification. And these were the results. Here we see at 4%, this is her vagus nerve function, or parasympathetic nerve function. It went up to 22% in 1 month, which is where we needed it to be. This is the effect of the brain on the heart, and the black and dark and red is not good. And so you can see that was much better. This is the level of harmony of the information going from the brain to the heart, and it often relates to our immune system. So that was at 8% and went up to 74%. And she was then able to resume work, return to work, resume a normal life, and not expected to need a pacemaker. Now, Heather had Hashimoto's low thyroid for years and years and years. And she got help with QNRT, but we didn't know the autoimmune work with our QNRT system. And she spun into Graves' disease, where she was hyperthyroid. She had a full-blown thyroid storm and had to be carried into the local hospital with a sky-high heart rate and complete weakness. After she got out, we had learned the QNRT autoimmune protocols that I'm discussing right now. We identified Epstein-Barr virus, like I talked with you about earlier. And after several resets and 2 months of homeopathic series therapy, so we always use nutrition to match what we're finding with the brain, the Epstein-Barr virus cleared. She now feels great. She is thyroid medication free after having been on thyroid medication for low thyroid and then on thyroid medication for a hyperthyroid. She is now thyroid medication free. She's had normal thyroid labs for 2 full years. I haven't heard of another case like that around the country. And that's why we have a very unique way of dealing with these issues. Now, on your first visit, you'll have a unique history form to evaluate, which will help us evaluate your hormones, immune system, detoxification pathways, and neurological health. We'll use heart rate variability that we showed you a moment ago to assess this autonomic nervous system, so important to controlling inflammation. You'll get a personal consultation with Dr. Winters, and we'll test organ-associated reflex points for indicators of metabolic stress. On your second visit, we'll do a comprehensive report to talk about what's going on, what we can do to help, what care is needed, and how much it will cost. And if you're accepted for care and you decide to get going with us, how you would like to proceed. So be sure you're a member of our Facebook groups, Drugless Support for Autoimmunity, Hope for Hashimoto's, Sick and Tired of Fit and Fabulous, Preventing Brain Decline, and Drugless Solutions for Children's Brain Health. Connect with us at Winters Wellness Center and on YouTube at Winters Wellness Center. And just like the patients that we've shown you here, with literally life-changing results. I've never known another place that had results like we have with Heather. Can you imagine going through life either on low thyroid medication and having a low heart rate and fatigue, or having hyperthyroid medication and having a thyroid storm and be totally weak and a sky-high heart rate? Most of these patients have to have their thyroid destroyed, and they're on medication for their entire life. Not only did she not have to have her thyroid destroyed, she doesn't even need thyroid medication. She has energy, she has focus, she has a quality of life, and that is what we hope to do for you. So many patients fly in to see us. We can do a consult with you on the phone to determine what may be needed when you come in to see us. And then after you see us, we can do work to follow up over the phone or Zoom or the internet. And we can do some pre-work. We can do work. We can order labs before you come to see us and take care of things that way. But a certain element of care is important to see us, because we save patients literally tens of thousands of dollars by finding this bad guy through our brain exam, the Epstein-Barr virus or the mold or many other triggering factors that we've covered. So check us out on winterswellness.com. Check out our Facebook groups, check out our YouTube, and I look forward to helping you. I'm Dr. Michael Winters, Winters Wellness, Chiropractic Redefined.